Welcome to War Chest Wednesday series on everyone's favorite trial lawyer podcast, Settlement Nation, brought to you by Independent Life, the only plaintiff-focused structured settlement provider. As always, I'm your host, Courtney Barber, and today we are sharing more great tools with you to add to your war chest in your fight for justice. On the show, we have Paul Littrel Jr. and Connor McDuffie from Strategic Relationships. Strategic harvests knowledgeable ex-employees that your defendant is praying you won't find. They are pioneers in insider witness mining. Strategic documents the exact nature of systemic wrongs by defendant companies. They identify and obtain compelling testimony from former employees that help plaintiff lawyers win. So welcome, Paul and Connor.
Hey, Courtney, thanks for having us on.
Welcome. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And now all plaintiff trial lawyers know they would have seen Strategic at every conference that we go to. They are the bright green booth that always has the cool eel that Paul is one day going to give to me. And we're going to talk today a little bit about the significance of the eel. But Paul, to begin with you, as the CEO and whistleblower enthusiast, how did you get started for the idea for Strategic?
Great question. So I had a investigative background. This company has been around for 20 years. But prior to that, I was a licensed investigator in the state of Georgia. I had the opportunity to get involved in a case where our client in D.C. was involved in a business dispute with Verizon. And what we did day in, day out were to call ex-employees of the other company and find out what they could tell us about the validity of our claims. And I just decided I liked it. Day in, day out, getting great information that could be very valuable to trial lawyers. And at some point we decided, hey, this is more fun than what we were doing before, and we want to do a lot more of it. So started the company around 20 years ago, and just went from there.
So Connor, what are some of the reasons that people, the attorneys listening to Settlement Nation, why should they utilize ex-employees as insider fact witnesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think to really sum it up, there's no better information than, the people that had boots on the ground. They were there at the time of the incident, or they had seen another similar incident to whatever negligence that's happened. And when you have eyewitnesses or you have people with physical evidence, whether that be training manuals or text messages, screenshots, videos, people like that, they don't really necessarily they don't know that they have a voice, or they don't know that they've seen that negligence day in and day out. And so really that's, I think, where we come in, is we're able to give those individuals a voice and, really help seek justice, through the attorney and then through us. Yeah.
So if one of our attorneys has a case right now where they think having an insider provide some valuable information against the defendant that they're pursuing against, what's the process to engage you to get your services?
Yeah, so actually it's really, really simple to get started. We need very limited information. And the main thing that we need is obviously the name of the defendant entity, and then the specific types of employees. So like specific job titles that you're looking for. If you're looking for janitors, managers, and HR reps, that would be a good example. And then the final piece of information that we need is a relevant time period to search within. So when you have all three of those things breaking down, you can get really, really pinpoint on a certain type of individual. If you only want one type of job title, or if you want only 1 year of time frame for us to search in, we can be really specific, or we can be really broad in those searches. Really that is the only information that we need to get started. You just call me, you give me that information, and we're underway.
That's great. Paul, I have a question for you. So based on the back of what Connor just said, How do using these ex-employees and these insiders strengthen the plaintiff position in both mediation and in the trial?
That's a great question. So what we believe is that in order to have a great case, in order to have a great outcome, whether you're going to trial or you're going to settle before trial, you have to prepare for trial either way. And so what we do is we arm your jurors or your potential jurors with the kind of insight that they would never have had it not been for the ex-employees. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, our clients will get names of ex-employees, but you can be sure that the names they're getting of the ex-employees are not the ones that are going to have the great information. And even if they are, they have already been contacted by opposing counsel. They've already been coached on what to say. The bad guys are not going to hand the good guys a knife and say, hey, kill me with this, So we really obtain the names of these exes completely independent of discovery. And so the other side doesn't know, what we're doing. It's all done ethically and all done from public, what we used to call public record. Now they call it open source. But these are people that are online and they match, like Connor was saying, the criteria. They match that criteria. So whatever our client asks us for, that's what we're going to bring them. And they really have a way of educating jurors and raising their perspective. The defendant wants to paint themselves in the best possible light, and what we do is provide insights and perspective to jurors, so that they're looking not only at the surface of that defendant, but they're able to see inside the defendant and see all those things they would rather hide.
And on that, do you have any examples or stories you could share on people using your service and what it has discovered or how it's been used and brought out some really good information that helped their case?
Sure. We did a case out of Alabama a couple of years ago, and our law client, his client was horribly injured in a vehicle accident. It was a single vehicle accident, but that car had run off the road. And what had happened, what had precipitated the car running off the road, and this guy getting so horribly injured, is he had just taken it to a dealership. And I won't mention the name of the dealer. I won't mention the name of the OEM, but it was a dealership that specialized in a certain manufactured vehicle. And my client's contention was that they had put a faulty tire on that vehicle. And so he said, what I really want is I want to talk to formerly employed, what are they called? Service managers. If you go to get your oil changed and you take it actually to the OEM where you bought your car, you have a Toyota or a Nissan or whatever, and you want to get the actual factory treatment, So you take it to Toyota or whoever. He said, I really want people who used to be the service manager. And I said, do they have to have been from Alabama? He said, no, they could be anywhere in the country. So we were able to just identify, scores of these folks that used to be service managers for this particular OEM. And another thing we do in the due course of the process is that I have a team of folks who, once we develop the list of these ex-employees, we can get on the phone and talk to them in such a way that puts them at ease and helps them open up. And we get extraordinary stories from them. In this case in particular, I met this lawyer. We work with lawyers all over the country, some of whom, we've never met. So I had a chance to meet this fella, and he's become a really good friend of mine. at Lanier, I think it was Lanier 4.0, and he recognized me and came up. And I said, well, how did it go? And he said, in this case, we made our own calls, which of course they can do, the lawyer. He said, the fifth person I talked to, I explained to them what I thought the scenario was and how something this awful could have happened. And they said, you are exactly right. I saw this same thing happening a number of times when I was so employed. And he said to them, would you mind talking to me further and even considering testifying on our behalf? And they said, absolutely.
That's fantastic. And, the listeners that we have, we all know trial lawyers are the most time poor people, probably in the world. I'm sure there's other people that are going to come after me now and say they have less time, maybe pilots. I don't know. But Connor, I'm going to start with you. And then Paul, I'm going to finish with you. If you were going to pick out what you think are the most beneficial 3 points of strategic for plaintiff trial lawyers, what would they be? And then Paul, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, it's a time saver. We're obviously experts at this. This has been our bread and butter for the last, 20 years. But the biggest time saver is, once you have a list of potential witnesses, we can utilize our interviewing team, like Paul had mentioned, and we'll handle everything for you. We will separate wheat from chaff, because when we do these investigations, we may come up with, 85, 90 people in some cases. And that's a lot of people to call. And so we can take it completely out of your hands, and we can find you the most knowledgeable, the most cooperative witnesses. So the time saver is a huge aspect. I think another great thing that we're able to do is, those investigations themselves, a lot of people think that what we do is just skip tracing, which is certainly not true. The skip tracing aspect is just a very, very small part of what we do. And Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say it's not even along the same lines of skip tracing. We're able to get into these investigations, do these really detailed, it's so customized and so tailored. So it's kind of like what I was mentioning before. If you want one single type of job title, if you want one single year that those people would have worked there, then that's what we're going to get you. We're not going to produce anything outside of that criteria. I think that those are, really good, big hit points.
And Paul, what about you? Different from Connor's, or maybe the same? What do you think are the 3 most beneficial things about strategic?
Well, I think the first one would be, everybody wants some insider or whistleblower to kind of fall in their lap and tell the whole story and blow the case away. But when we get, we've been doing this for a while. We have a very formulaic way of going about it. And so once we have your criteria, what we call search criteria, and we know the kind of person you're really looking for and the time frame and so forth, as Connor said, our clients literally have that list in their possession within 2 weeks. So there's no waiting involved. As you said, we call it an EAL. It stands for ex-employee list. And they're going to have their EAL. We're going to deliver the EAL and get it to them in about 2 weeks. We had a case a couple of years ago. It's a little bit different than what we do regularly, but it was really valuable to the client. We identified this young lady. We had a case against Mitsubishi Motors, and that was one of the defendants and co-defendants as well. But we identified this lady who had once worked for Mitsubishi, I think for 6 or 7 years, and she had actually worked in their crash worthiness team. This is, of course, the lab where they wreck the vehicles. They see how the vehicle performs under these kind of conditions. Well, this gal, her name was Susan. She had worked in that capacity for 6 or 7 years for Mitsubishi. And she told us right from the get-go, I don't really want to get involved in a lawsuit. I don't want to get deposed. And who can blame her? But she said this. She said, I am no longer under an NDA. I've been gone long enough when my NDA is expired. And I know some stuff. which I'm willing to tell you. So she came in as what our clients called a consulting expert. And they paid her a pretty reasonable sized or a reasonable amount of money in the form of a retainer for her, just for her time. This gal knew all the vocabulary, all the nomenclature for Mitsubishi, so that when our clients are writing their interrogatories, they can say something like, they can ask a question about the annual review, and the client can answer it, and they say, we don't have that, because they call it something entirely different. They call it a yearly evaluation or something. So this gal that we developed, Susan, she knew exactly what to call everything. And so she came in as a consulting expert, helped our client write their interrogatories. Well, as soon as those interrogatories got to the opposing counsel, they were like, whoa, how do they know to ask this question in this way using those words? And clearly they must have thought there must be a ghost in the machine. Now Susan was not going to be used to amend that complaint. So she was really undiscoverable, but she was valuable. We had a client, and he had a co-counsel, and both of them said one of them called her the linchpin of the case, and the other one said she was worth her weight in gold. So there are a number of ways that you can utilize these folks who have all that experience.
Well, if that is not a good enough testimonial, I don't know what is. And Connor, now with all these people listening all over America, how do they engage to work with you guys? What do they do? Where do they go? What's the process?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, strategic with a J. Everybody gets that screwed up, but it's strategic spelled with a J, .com. And my direct line is there, or my email. You can email me directly. You can call or text me directly. My name is blasted all over that website. My number's all over the website. Just call or text me anytime. I mean, it's literally that simple.
And Paul, what is your contact details in case anyone wants to speak to the founder of the eel? Sure.
So they can call me on my cell, and I'll get that number to you right now. It is 770-862-0393, 770-862-0393. And my email address is Paul, that's Paul, Paul at strategic with a J, strategic.com, Paul at strategic.com.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of people coming to you now, especially because now they know exactly what you do and why it's so important that they need you for their next case. And for everyone that listens to Settlement Nation, thank you so much for keeping us as your favorite trial lawyer podcast. Remember, you can like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you email both these guys. They're very responsive and they will help you win more cases.